welcome to Exploring Science with the Gazaways. I'm Mrs. Gazaway.
I'm Mr. Blake. We're so glad you're joining us today. We have something special planned and a fun project.
Today we are going to experiment with elephant toothpaste.
Now, for those of you that haven't ever made elephant toothpaste before, we're going to show you how to do that in just a little bit, as well as explain some of the science behind it, and then also give you some different investigations you can do with it. But what's really cool about elephant toothpaste is it's a chance to break apart molecules.
Okay, for this you're going to need safety materials. Some of the safety materials that we're going to use is we're going to wear gloves, because the percentage of hydrogen peroxide that we're going to use today, it may burn your hands. We also need eye protection, so goggles, if you have glasses, sunglasses, just anything to help protect your eyes. You'll also need a lab coat or an old t-shirt or something, just in case you get a little bit on your clothes, because it could stain your clothes. And the most important part is this experiment, you are going to have to do it with an adult. Okay, so if you're a child watching this, please get an adult to help you do this. Adult supervision is required for this activity.
As we said, we're going to be using hydrogen peroxide, and many of you are familiar with that, as it usually comes in a dark bottle like this. And this is something that when you're riding your bicycle and you fall down and get a scrape, it's something you put on there to help clean the wound, and you'll notice it'll bubble up and stuff. But that is something that we do want to be careful with, as this particular one wouldn't burn your skin, but various other concentrations of it might. So we do want to be careful. And the reason why this is just as an interesting fact, it's in this dark bottle, is because it actually breaks down with light. So that's why you find it in a dark bottle.
Alright, so the materials that you need for elephant toothpaste is a plastic bottle. You will make sure that it's a clear one, because it's more interesting. So any size bottle will work. So plastic bottle. You will need hydrogen peroxide. We're going to actually do two different experiments at once. I'm going to use the regular 3% hydrogen peroxide that you can buy at the store that Mr. Blake just explained. And Mr. Blake is going to use a special 20 volume or 6% hydrogen peroxide that we found at the hair salon. So if you want to use that, you can. You just have to wait until the hair salons are open and go buy it there. The next thing that we need is yeast. Okay, you can use 1 packet of yeast, or if you have the jar of yeast, it's about 1 tablespoon. You'll need 3 tablespoons of warm water. So what we did is we went and boiled some water, and then we set it out here for a little bit. So it doesn't have to be boiling, but it just needs to be a little warm. The next thing you will need is 1 tablespoon of dish soap. You can use any brand that you would like. Then you need food coloring, a small cup. We're going to get real quick. A funnel and a spoon. And of course, some measuring cups. And also the foam could overflow, so make sure you do it on a table that you can get something on, or I highly suggest to do it in a tray, a pan, a bowl, anything, so that it doesn't leak all over and it's easier cleanup. Just a warning, the hydrogen peroxide that Mr. Blake will be using, the 6% hydrogen peroxide, it can irritate the skin or your eyes, so make sure you wear protectant. And when we do it, make sure if you're using the 20 volume or 6% hydrogen peroxide, make sure you do not touch the foam. Even with gloves on, please don't touch it unless you're trying to clean it up and it accidentally gets on you, and that's okay. But on the other hand, with the 3% hydrogen peroxide, you can touch the foam because it's just regular everyday use and it will be fine. Just still make sure you wear your gloves just in case.
And the foam is going to be mostly made up of air and soapy water for the bubbles, but we do want to be careful. And even though we know that this 6% can cause skin irritation and some chemical burns, there will be trace elements of that in there, so that's why we want to be very careful.
Okay, today we are going to experiment with elephant toothpaste. So we're going to see what happens to elephant toothpaste when we do them in different size containers. So we have this regular bottle container, we have a small Gatorade container, Then we have a 1 liter bottle and a 2 liter bottle that we will be demonstrating this with. As we go along, we're also going to show you what happens when you use the 3% hydrogen peroxide and the 6% hydrogen peroxide. So we're just going to be able to see the difference between them and between the different bottles.
So we hope you guys are ready to have some fun as you go about. If you're a returning viewer, we appreciate you coming back. If you're brand new, be sure and subscribe to our page and like it, as we're going to be doing all kinds of fun things. But first, we got to get back to that elephant toothpaste.
All right, again, please make sure you do this with an adult. It is very, very important. Do not do this at home unless you have an adult's help. Okay, first you will use a funnel to carefully pour half a cup of hydrogen peroxide into the bottle. Okay, so Mr. Blake's gonna pour his half a cup, and I will pour my half a cup. Remember, Mr. Blake is using the 6% that you can get at the salon, and I am using the 3% that you can get at the store, which is probably more of what you would use at home. Woo.
You may also have it in your medicine cabinet. As I said, hydrogen peroxide is something that we can use to clean our wounds. So if you're out and you get a scratch or a cut, it's something you can put on there. And it seems kind of scary as it bubbles up, but that's just it doing its thing and trying to clean the wound.
Okay, so again, I'm going to use my funnel, put it in my bottle. It's kind of windy, it's knocking everything over. And then carefully pour the hydrogen peroxide in. Okay, if you're using the 6%, be very careful with that stuff because you do not want it to get on your gloves, if at all possible, because then you'll like wipe it on your skin or anything like that. Next step is that we are going to take out the funnel and you will add about 10 drops of food coloring into your hydrogen peroxide. Oh, mine's empty. Alright, I'm going to only get 7 drops that time, but it'll be fine. Alright. You could mix the colors if you want to, but I don't want to right now. Alright. The next step is you're going to add 1 tablespoon of dish soap to your mixture. So put the funnel back on. You will take the tablespoon, pour the dish soap in there, and then get as much out as possible. So you'll have your funnel. Pour it in there and get as much as you can in there. You're not going to get every single drop. You might have a little left in your funnel, and that's just fine. Okay, I'm going to take my funnel out so that it doesn't blow away. Alright, now in a separate cup, oh, I forgot. We need to swirl the dish soap and the hydrogen peroxide. So just mix it up just a little bit. Okay, and then the next step is in a separate cup, you're going to mix 1 packet or 1 tablespoon of yeast and pour it into a separate cup. So not the same one, just a separate one. I should have got some scissors out here.
This might be a good time to also have a pair of scissors handy.
Yep.
Or a pocket knife.
And don't do what I just did. Alright. Okay, so I have my yeast inside the cup. Now you are going to add 3 tablespoons of warm water. And then you will use your spoon to stir the yeast and the water. It'll get kind of clumpy. If it gets too clumpy, add just a little bit more water, but not too much. This is a step that we need to do quickly because it clumps easily. So, stir for about 30-ish seconds. Like I said, if it gets clumpy, that's fine. I just don't use the clumpy part. And we're just mixing the yeast up in our cup. You can use a different spoon to get the clump out there. Okay, our next step is to make sure everything is out of the way. so that we don't get the elephant toothpaste on everything. Alright, remember I used 3% hydrogen peroxide and Mr. Blake used 6% hydrogen peroxide. So let's see if there's any difference. So you're just going to take the funnel, just pour what you can of your yeast into the cup. After you pour it in, then just release the funnel as quickly as possible. And you will see your reaction. So you can tell whose is producing the most elephant toothpaste at a faster rate. Who do you think? That's right, Mr. Blake. So the 6% hydrogen peroxide made a bigger reaction. So we'll see if that is still the case in our other experiments. So right now we're going to take a minute and clean everything up. We're in our backyard, so we're just going to use our garden hose to spray everything down real quick. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you is if you touch the bottle, try and touch it without like exactly touching the foam. If you touch the bottle when you have gloves on, you can feel that it is kind of warm. If I go touch Mr. Blake's, his is probably a little bit more warm. And his is still going even. That's pretty cool. Alright, so we're going to use our garden hose real quick so that we can clean all of this up. This, you could just rinse it out, dump it in your sink, clean your sink out real good, then throw the bottle away. We're just going to set these aside for right now.
So my elephant toothpaste is still going, still producing.
So we'll clean mine up first. This is one good thing about backyard science is you can just use a garden hose for easy cleanup. All right, we'll set Mr. Blake's over here.
Now, as I said at the beginning of our episode, I mentioned that elephant toothpaste is a chance to break apart molecules. This is a really cool thing, as hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. Now, many of you have probably heard something very similar to this in H2O. You guys know what that is? That's right. If you said water, you're correct. So water is H2O. So hydrogen peroxide is really close to water, but it's just a little bit different. It has that extra oxygen molecule, and when you add that, you get hydrogen peroxide. So with this experiment, what we're doing is we're removing the oxygen. And so when we put in the dish soap, we put that in there, that actually helps hold the oxygen and hold the bubble. So that's why it foams up. And we talked about using a catalyst. The catalyst speeds up the reaction and it helps remove the oxygen. So it's a really fun thing, and as we said, for the foam, it's mostly oxygen and soapy water, but there is some trace elements of the hydrogen peroxide, or like I said, I had the 6%, so we do want to be really careful with that, but it's a fun way to break apart the molecules and have some fun with science. So that's just a little bit of the science behind what's happening, which makes it fun. So we're going to go ahead and try to see if we can get some different reactions here as we do this investigation. We're going to try some different bottle sizes and see if that changes anything on our experiment here.
Okay, next we're going to see what happens when we use a smaller bottle. So we're going to use a miniature Gatorade bottle. So again, we do the exact same steps that we did before. You'll use a funnel to carefully pour in half a cup of hydrogen peroxide.
And again, I'm going to use the 6% solution, and Mrs. Gazaways, she'll use the 3%.
I does not want to stay up today.
So I'm going to add mine to the bottle.
Pick my bottle back up again. Hopefully it'll stay up this time. This is one bad thing about doing the science experiments outside, is that it could be windy. You can't really control the weather.
And something to be thinking about too is I went ahead and put the cap on before I even considered pouring in the hydrogen peroxide, because we don't want to have any accidents, have any messes.
All right, so then you will add your food coloring. We're gonna just do like 5 or 6 drops because we're running out of food coloring. After that, you will put your funnel back in and add 1 tablespoon of dish soap. Okay, then you can take the funnel out, swirl it around just a little bit, get it all mixed in there. In a separate cup, you will mix 1 package of yeast or 1 tablespoon of yeast if you're using the jar of yeast. Again, we should have went and got some scissors, but it'll be fine. So pour all the yeast in there and then add 3 tablespoons of warm water. Once you add the 3 tablespoons, go ahead and mix your yeast up. The table's malfunctioning. And remember, it could be kind of clumpy. Just get all the clumps out that you can. We'll stir this up for about 30 seconds. Once you have stirred it up all the way, go ahead and put your funnel back in there. Then you will pour your yeast mixture into your funnel. It'll go into your bottle, and then you will quickly lift the funnel. But before you do that, make sure your area is clean so that you don't get this all over everything. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Neither one of us got our funnel out in time.
It went so quickly because it's a smaller container, so it didn't have as far to travel.
So you can see I actually have some in my funnel. And Mrs. Gazaways said that that reaction happened a little bit quicker. It really didn't happen any faster than the previous one, but it appears like it did because we had less bottle to go through. So our bottle now is roughly this size, so we lost about this much. So it still rose the same rate, but it ended up at the top of the bottle quicker.
And if you can see, mine is not making very much foam, but Mr. Blake's, his has tons of foam. So again, I'm using the 3% that you can get at home, and he is using the 6%. I've even seen videos where they use bit higher percentages, and it's an even cooler reaction.
Yeah, there are some really fun videos that you can see where they use like 30%, and they made foam the size of, say, a swimming pool or a backyard. It was pretty cool. Okay,
so if you fill the sides of the bottle, they're kind of warm because it's that chemical reaction going on. And then if you use the 3%, you can go ahead and fill the foam. But if you use the 6%, I would not mess with it. So we're going to again use our garden hose to wash everything down. now going to see what happens using a 1 liter bottle.
Something too, as you guys try this, I would be curious, and we're not going to test it today, but I would be curious to know what happens if we increase or decrease the size of the opening on our bottle. What if we have a big wide one? What happens to that versus what if we put the cap back on this, say, and just had a hole the size of a pencil? Do you think that would change the foam coming out of it, the elephant toothpaste? Do you think that would change it some?
And let's see if we'll have time this time to get our funnels out. Our first step is going to be to pour half a cup of hydrogen peroxide into our bottle.
I'm going to try to see if I can get mine to stay in my measuring cup since it is so windy.
Can you talk about that we think like it's not faster but it means it's taller? Okay, at some point. You will now add about 10 drops of food coloring. Go ahead and swirl that around in there. Then you will add 1 tablespoon of dish soap. Another experiment could be like, what would happen with the different types of dish soap? There are several different experiments that you could do with elephant toothpaste. We're just doing a couple today. After you get that soap in there, go ahead and swirl it around a little bit. After you swirl it around, get a different cup and mix your yeast packet. So you could use 1 packet of yeast or 1 tablespoon of yeast if you have the jar of yeast. Another way you could maybe experiment with putting different amounts of yeast in your elephant toothpaste. Like I said, so many possibilities. You will then add 3 tablespoons of water, warm water. After you add the 3 tablespoons of warm water, you will stir for about 30 seconds. Remember, this acts as our catalyst or our activator. Does that make sense? That didn't make sense, cut it out.
Something else you can do too, just to kind of get an idea about yeast and what it does and how it kind of generates some power, because that's what we use on our bread and stuff, is to you can put it in a bottle, don't put anything else in there, but put it in a bottle and put a balloon on, and it'll actually inflate that balloon a little bit, and that'll show you just kind of something fun to do on the side.
Okay, once you have stirred that for about 30 seconds, you will put your funnel back in your bottle. And then you will pour your yeast mixture into your bottle. Remember, after you pour it in, quickly remove your funnel.
Now we'll see if we have time to get our funnel out this time, as the foam, the elephant toothpaste, the foam is going to rise at the same thing, but what my guess is that since this bottle is taller, we are going to have time to get it out. So, you ready?
1, 2, 3. See how we had, whoa, it just like kind of shot out there. That was pretty cool. I was not expecting that. Mine's still going, as you can see.
Yours is really slow.
So it might be worth going and buying the 20 volume or the 6% hydrogen peroxide from any beauty salon. It wasn't too expensive. You just have to remember to use adult supervision with it and to be safe.
So Mrs. Gazaways is still going just a little bit, but it's much slower. So that difference between the 6 and the 3% definitely does make a little bit of a change there. So
it's coming. Give it time.
So mine's actually spilled out of my bottle or my container into Mrs. Gazaways, and like I said, I can feel the heat on this. Mine definitely is a little bit warmer than what hers is.
Yeah, you can feel that chemical reaction.
So I think mine's just about done.
Here, I'd scoot back in front of you. One thing that I do with my kids is if it's going slow, they're like, oh, it's not going very big. What you can do, don't do this at home, please. I do in my classroom, but I probably shouldn't, is you can squeeze it, and it'll make it shoot up even more and have a bigger reaction. It makes this 3% hydrogen peroxide a little bit more fun. But don't do that unless you're outside or you have a way to clean it up, because the food coloring likes to stain stuff. Ask my students. Alright, we are going to use our garden hose to clean up.
And even if we weren't using food coloring in this, the yeast would still cause something to stain. So if you did this and it say shot on the ceiling, the yeast is kind of a yellow and off-white color, so it's going to cause it to give some staining there as well.
Again, cleanup's kind of easy if you keep it contained into like a bowl or a pan. That way you can just wash it out with soap and water really, really well. Right now we're just washing it off with our garden hose, but when we're all the way finished, we'll go inside and wash these off with soap and water. Alright, our final experiment is going to be with 2-liter bottles. So let's see how this works. Alright, again, follow all the steps. So first you will pour 1/2. You will pour 1/2 cup of hydrogen peroxide into your bottle.
We planned that just right because I have no more left.
I was hoping he would have enough. Alright. Put your funnel in your bottle. Pour in your hydrogen peroxide. Again, mine is the 3% that you can buy at store. And Mr. Blake's is 6% that you can buy at the hair salon. And let me actually see what that is called. Okay, when you go to the hair salon, this is called 20 volume clear developer. Because I went into the salon and they weren't sure what was 6% hydrogen peroxide. So you need 20 volume clear developer. This is what we ended up getting.
Thank goodness for Google.
Yeah. Alright, after you mix in the hydrogen peroxide, you mix about 10 drops of your food coloring. Go ahead and swirl. Do you guys think we will have a bigger or a smaller reaction? And how long do you think it will take for it to reach the top? Those are all good questions to ask. I think Mr. Blake is going to do a mixture of blue and yellow.
So I'm going to try to run this down the sides of my bottle and see if I can get a couple of different colors. Thank you.
Alright, remember, the next step is to add 1 tablespoon of dish soap. There goes your cup again. It does not want to stay put. Ooh, that wind is picking up. I think it might rain later, so hopefully we can get this finished.
It feels good because it's a little toasty.
It is cooling down a lot. Alright, so you add your 1 tablespoon of dish soap. Just go ahead and swirl, swirl, swirl. I'll get Mr. Blake's cup.
So like I said, you can see on my can see on mine that I have the food coloring trickling down the bottle here. So in theory, as it shoots up, I should get some streaks of color in that. We'll see.
All right, the next step is to mix your either 1 tablespoon or 1 packet of yeast and 3 tablespoons of water. I highly suggest you use scissors and not a pocket knife. But we forgot the scissors, as you know. And that happens. So we improvised. After you add your yeast, you'll add 3 tablespoons of warm water. You don't need it too hot, but make sure it's not cold. Make sure it's warm. All right, after you add the 3 tablespoons of warm water, take a spoon or a stirring stick and stir that up there. It works a lot better if you have a stirring stick, but we do not have any of those at home. Those are all still in my classroom. And then, like I said, if you only have a spoon, maybe you could stir it with the bottom of the spoon. That would work a little bit better. Because if you stir it with the top of the spoon, it clumps up really bad on the top. So you just stir it about 30 seconds.
And if you need to, because I've got a couple of clumps in mine, kind of use the spoon on the side of the cup to smash it out just a little bit.
All right, before we pour these, whose elephant toothpaste do you predict is going to come out faster? Whose do you predict is going to make the most foam? If you've been paying attention, I bet you can predict that. Remember, I'm using the 3% hydrogen peroxide and Mr. Blake is using 6%. All right, are you ready? You're going to add your yeast mixture and then quickly pull out your funnel. Make sure that everything is out of the way. Ready, set, go. And again, his went faster and his shot up a lot farther, and I can see the different stripes. That looks cool.
So my idea did work on giving some stripes on my elephant toothpaste. Like I said, you got to be careful when you put the food coloring in there, but I just put it on the lid and let it run down the side, and it does give some stripes.
So mine may be...
I don't think Mrs. Gazaways is going to even get out of the bottle.
Alright, so if you only have this at home, you can give it a little push. Make sure your eyes are out of the way. Make sure the children are out of the way. And you can get a put. You'll have to give it some force. And you can also make a reaction like Mr. Blitz. You just have to give it a little help.
So something too that I've observed in this is with a 3%, the bigger the container, so the more volume it is, the harder that the reaction has to work to get it actually to come out of the bottle. So the more volume it is, the harder it is. And why do you guys think that is? Those are some good ideas, but it has to do because there's a volume limit on what Mrs. Gazaways is making versus what mine is. So if we got, say, a 5-gallon barrel or a 55-gallon drum, mine may not have enough to get it out of there either. So I'm still curious on, as I said, about what if we had smaller openings or larger openings for the elephant toothpaste to shoot out of.
And what the difference is between the hydrogen peroxide is, I'm not sure if Mr. Blake explained this or not, but the 3% and the difference between the 3% and the 6% is this 3% has less hydrogen molecules. It has more water, but less hydrogen molecules. The 6% has even more hydrogen molecules and less water. So that's why it is reacting and acting cooler.
So we appreciate you guys watching today. That pretty much wraps it up for today. I hope you guys had fun making elephant toothpaste with us. I know we had a lot of fun. It was nice to get outside and get some fresh air and get some sun and do a really fun experiment. Be sure if you enjoyed what we did today, be sure and subscribe to our channel, like and share, have some fun with it, and can't wait until we bring you another video here shortly.
Until next time on Exploring Science with the Gazaways. Bye!